Well, yesterday I was editing this video with a chainsaw and I left out this really important part. Here it is. Well, so talk a minute, if you would, about what constitutes a good rudder and what constitutes a bad rudder, and how do we figure out which we've got, and there's some gray area in there as well too. So I know you got 4130 versus 1025. Isn't that the kind of what it boils down to?
So originally these rudders were made out of 1025 mile steel. They have determined that that is the issue, that if it is a 41, if it's chromoly 4130 in rudder, it is not affected by this AD. The problem is to identify if you have a 1025 rudder or do you have a 4130 rudder. Piper records, which are not the gospel, indicate that after, I think, June the 4th or sometime in June, it's in the service bulletin that Piper issued, after that date in 1974, you could have a 4130 rudder or a 1025 rudder. They're not sure. I speculate that most of those rudders were 4130, but need to verify that. So the way to verify that is to use nitric acid and test that on the rudder. The problem is you got to take off fabric, take off paint, yada, yada, yada. And on a flying airplane, you'd hate to do that and then have to recover something that was actually 4130. So what I just ordered some nitric acid. I found a small quantity. Now, if you look in the service bulletin or the AD, they list a vendor. I priced it out. It was almost $300 to get it delivered to me. And it was way more than I'm ever going to use. Well, I found a vendor that sells the specific nitric acid that they call for $20 for 3 milliliters. It, to my door, was $22 and some change. And it will be here next week. So what I'm going to do, because I have a 1982 model Super Cub, okay, should have a 4130 rudder. I'm pretty daggum sure that it does have a 4130 rudder. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the rudder. I'm going to pull the steering arm, the aluminum steering arm that's attached with 2A and 3 bolts to the bottom of that rudder. I'm going to scrape any paint or anything off of that, and then you drop a drop of this nitric acid. If it stays clear, it's 4130. If it turns yellow or brown, it's 1025, and the AD applies. Then I can mix up some LPS3 or, some epoxy primer or whatever, put in there, put it back together, and get on with life. All of the PMA, there was never been a PMA issued, so that's parts manufacturer approval, for a 1025 rudder. So if your rudder was replaced with a new rudder, it is a 4130 rudder. There are 3 manufacturers of rudders. Univer is the oldest. They've been around the longest, and all of their rudders are 4130. So if you have a logbook entry that you got a Univer rudder, you're golden. Dakota Cub builds a 4130 rudder. And you can tell if you have a Dakota Cub rudder, if you look at the steering arm that's welded to the bottom of the rudder, Dakota Cub put a square hole in that steering arm versus the round holes that Piper used and the other manufacturers. And then Alaska Gear Company, formerly Airframes Alaska, also builds a 4130 rudder. So you've got 3 manufacturers. If you have logbook entry that somebody installed any of those 3, you're good. If your airplane is, you're going to get into a paperwork issue, and some of these are going to have to be verified using the nitric acid.